McLaren, a team built by a car enthusiast who followed a path of perfection and ended up on top of the motor racing world. These are the origins of McLaren Racing. In 1952, the newly formed Formula One World Championship was already in its third season, and European fans were enthralled as Ferrari driver Alberto Ascari cantered to the first of back-to-back victories in the Drivers' Championship. But on the other side of the world in New Zealand, another epic Formula One story was just beginning. Bruce McLaren grew up in the suburbs of Auckland in a flat above his father's garage, and the two shared a passion for motor vehicles. A hip condition left the energetic sport-obsessed youngster confined to his bed for 3 years, but by the age of 12, Bruce was able to walk on his own again, and was more obsessed with cars than ever. In 1952, he and his father travelled to New Zealand's west coast so that Bruce, who was now 15 years old, could enter his very first race, the Muriwai Beach Hill Climb. The young Kiwi raced a 1929 Austin Ulster up the gravel hill to take his first competitive victory, sparking a dream that would take him to the pinnacle of motorsport. Bruce stood out for both his raw speed and ability to analyse, modify and improve a car's performance by himself. He gained success in New Zealand's Formula 2 series and was soon selected for the country's Driver to Europe programme. He impressed as soon as he arrived, securing a Formula 1 seat at Cooper for the 1959 season. The rookie took his first podium at the British Grand Prix and raced to victory in the season finale in Florida. At just 22 years old, Bruce had become the youngest Formula One Championship race winner to date. It was a remarkable rise for a young man racing so far from home, but Bruce McLaren's motorsport dreams rose even higher still. By 1963, Bruce McLaren was a 3-time Grand Prix winner, a Drivers' Championship runner-up, and a famous face on the Formula One grid. But his vision extended far beyond the cockpit, and more than anything, he loved to innovate and develop race cars. He once said, "To do something well is so worthwhile that to die trying to do it better cannot be foolhardy." And it was this boundless enthusiasm that drove him to form his own team, aged just 29. Working alongside brothers Timmy and Teddy Mayer, Bruce McLaren Racing entered the Australasian Tasman Series, an off-season event popular with F1's finest, and Bruce won the 1964 championship with a custom-built Cooper. Despite limited resources, Bruce and Teddy decided to enter into Formula One and hired aerospace engineer Robin Hurd to design their first car, the M2B. The team didn't own a transporter or van, so instead they loaded the M2B onto a trailer and towed it all the way to the south of France for the 1966 Monaco Grand Prix, parking up in Casino Square 2 days later. As McLaren driver Chris Ayrton said, having decided on something, he never allowed anything to get in the way of getting it done. It was an inauspicious start to life in F1, summed up by an early race retirement and Bruce forgetting his racing boots, forcing him to saw the ends off his shoes so that he could operate the pedals. Bruce and his Kiwi teammate Denny Hulme soon started to compete at the sharp end of the grid, with McLaren's maiden race victory delivered courtesy of Bruce himself at the 1968 Belgian Grand Prix. But as McLaren's momentum grew, disaster struck. In the summer of 1970, at a Can-Am testing event at Goodwood, Bruce suffered a fatal crash. The motorsport world had lost an icon, whose racing journey was seemingly in full flight. As the man himself once said, life is measured in achievement, not in years alone. By his own measure, Bruce McLaren's life was nothing short of a remarkable success. Bruce was gone, but his dreams of Formula One glory were still very much alive at the McLaren team. His business partner Teddy Mayer took over the reins, and they targeted championship success as designers Gordon Coppock and John Barnard developed the M23 for the start of the 1973 season. It was a car that would turn McLaren from contenders into champions. The M23 had brilliant aerodynamics and raw speed, thanks to a 490 horsepower Ford Cosworth engine. But more importantly, the car had development potential. In 1974, the M23's aerodynamics, bodywork and wheelbase were all upgraded, propelling Brazilian driver Emerson Fittipaldi to World Championship glory and McLaren to the top of the constructors' standings. 2 years later, it was Britain's James Hunt at the wheel of a lighter, revitalised M23. In a dramatic title fight with Ferrari's Niki Lauda, the McLaren driver won out, sealing the driver's crown at a rain-soaked championship decider in Japan. In total, the M23 claimed 16 Grand Prix victories across 5 Formula One seasons. Teddy Mayer had taken the team to the pinnacle of Formula One. There could be no more fitting tribute to the memory of his late friend and their founder, Bruce McLaren. While the McLaren team spent the 1970s tasting championship glory, a young and ambitious Brabham mechanic named Ron Dennis had started out on his own journey to the top. In 1972, Dennis formed Rondel Racing with fellow mechanic Neil Trundle. Dennis's fussy, fastidious approach, not to mention Rondel Racing's immaculate transporter, drew the ire of their competitors and earned them the nickname Team Briefcase. Rondel Racing became Project 4 during a decade spent climbing up motorsport's ranks. For Dennis, success mattered, but doing it in style counted almost as much. His racing teams had a meticulous professional sheen that set them apart from many in the still somewhat chaotic motorsport world. Dennis said, "To be professional, you have to look professional. To look sloppy is to be sloppy." By the late 1970s, McLaren's championship pedigree had faded, and the team appeared out of step, having failed to fully harness the forces of ground effect aerodynamics. Heading in an opposite trajectory was the now 32-year-old Dennis and Project 4. A merger was brokered between the two teams, and Dennis took full control of the newly named McLaren International as Teddy Mayer stepped back. The gritty, down-to-earth days of Bruce McLaren were over, and Dennis's arrival marked a new dawn of professionalism and innovation in Formula One. McLaren were about to hit the stratosphere. Following Ron Dennis through the doors at McLaren International was returning designer John Barnard. Taking inspiration from the aerospace industry, Barnard pioneered a singular chassis and body built from carbon fibre. The monocoque of the 1981 MP41 was light, strong and improved driver safety. It was a revolutionary development in motorsport that, in time, was adopted by every team in Formula One. By 1984, the newly innovative McLaren were ready to challenge for the title again. Drivers Alain Prost and Niki Lauda took the wheel of the MP42, now powered by a bespoke turbo-powered TAG Porsche engine. With carbon fibre brakes and 650 brake horsepower at their disposal, McLaren dominated, winning 12 races as Lauda claimed the Drivers' Championship in Portugal, and the team won their first Constructors' title in a decade. Ron Dennis's outfit were back on top of the world, but his ambition ensured that this was only the start. Prost took back-to-back championships before a switch to Honda engines and the signing of prodigious Brazilian driver Ayrton Senna saw McLaren reach new heights in the late 1980s and early 90s. Senna took 3 drivers' titles in 4 years, and Prost also became a triple world champion. Season upon season, McLaren topped the team standings in an unprecedented period of dominance. Never before had a team won 4 constructors' titles in a row. Ron Dennis's dream of motor racing perfection had come true. As well as the best car, Ron Dennis wanted the best drivers, with Prost and Senna arguably the most gifted of their generation. But McLaren's policy of having 2 number 1 drivers created a conflict that clouded some of the team's golden moments. On track, neither gave an inch as the 1988 World Championship became a McLaren-only affair, and the team dominated completely, with Prost and Senna winning 15 of the 16 races. But the pair's relationship swiftly deteriorated following an overtake Senna made on Prost in the restart of the 1989 San Marino Grand Prix. Prost claiming they'd agreed that the leader would be unchallenged at the first turn, Senna insisting a restart didn't count within that agreement. Their feud led to one of motorsport's most acrimonious moments at the 1989 Japanese Grand Prix. With Prost on the cusp of a third title, they famously collided and unrepentantly blamed each other for the incident. Prost retired from the race as Senna recovered and took victory, but the Brazilian was later disqualified in controversial circumstances that even Dennis would officially protest. But Prost was champion. The Frenchman moved to Ferrari, citing his relationship with Senna as a major factor behind the switch. McLaren waved goodbye to a triple world champion, and one of the most successful, talented and combustible driver pairings in Formula One history came to an end. Throughout their history, McLaren have forged successful relationships with engine suppliers, and their almost unbeatable run with Honda was neither their first nor last title-winning partnership. McLaren were a customer as Ford Cosworth engines powered Bruce McLaren to the team's maiden race victory, and then the drivers' titles of Fittipaldi and Hunt. Ron Dennis's arrival saw McLaren seek closer technical partnerships with engine manufacturers. The team partnered with Technique d'Avant-Garde to acquire bespoke engines manufactured by Porsche as Formula One became turbocharged. The relationship yielded 3 consecutive drivers' championships as McLaren returned to the top of the sport. The team switched to Honda as the Japanese manufacturer replaced TAG as the dominant engine supplier in Formula One. And the new partnership pushed the team on to an incredible haul of 7 drivers' titles and 6 constructors' championships in just 8 years. Spells with Ford and Peugeot failed to bring further championship success, leading McLaren to partner with Mercedes in 1995. The on-track return of the Silver Arrows coincided with the arrival of genius aerodynamicist Adrian Newey, whose Williams cars had knocked McLaren off their perch at the start of the decade to become Formula One's dominant force. Newey's MP4 13 and 14 McLaren Mercedes powered Mika Hakkinen to back-to-back championships as the team fought off the challenge of rivals Ferrari. The team remained in the title hunt for another decade as drivers like Kimi Räikkönen and Fernando Alonso came close to matching Häkkinen's success. But it was 23-year-old Lewis Hamilton who returned McLaren Mercedes to championship glory once more, securing the 2008 driver's crown in a dramatic showdown with Ferrari's Felipe Massa. It was another decade and another winning partnership. Hamilton's success was a standout moment in what was also an era of frustration. The team's quest for perfection meant that nothing but consistent championship success was good enough. Change became almost inevitable. Dennis stepped down as CEO in 2009, and McLaren became a Mercedes customer rather than a full works partner when the Silver Arrows formed their own outfit. Dennis returned in 2014, and feeling like they wouldn't get the service from Mercedes required to win, McLaren revived their dream partnership with Honda for the 2015 season. But the project turned into a nightmare as the team twice finished second to last in the Constructors' Championship. A boardroom dispute led to Dennis selling his remaining shares, and his era of perfection, which in truth had started to fade several years earlier, was officially over. 2017 saw the return of an old livery and the start of the modern McLaren era. The orange papaya of Bruce McLaren's 1968 M7A had always been iconic. Its return, closely followed by the arrival of young drivers Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris, saw the team undergo a feel-good culture change that was spearheaded by new CEO Zak Brown. McLaren achieved podium finishes before Daniel Ricciardo took victory at the 2021 Italian Grand Prix in a 1-2 with teammate Lando Norris, marking a joyous return to form for a team that had for too long been relegated to the back of the grid. That it was achieved in the papaya orange of their founder's original race-winning car made McLaren's return to the top step of the Formula One podium that much sweeter. After over 50 years in Formula One, McLaren remain one of the most successful teams in history, with 8 constructors' titles, 12 drivers' championships, and more race wins than any team other than Ferrari. The different approaches of Bruce McLaren, Teddy Mayer and Ron Dennis created a unique DNA that formed a racing dynasty like no other. Their game-changing race cars have been taken to the limit by some of the best drivers of all time, in a story of success that reached unprecedented heights. These are the origins of McLaren, the ambitious, perfectionist, feel-good writers of Formula One history.